In South Asia, farmers often grow only 1 or 2 crops a year on the same field. Because of lack of irrigation or rainwater, increasing soil salinity, and costly farm inputs, many struggle to produce a good crop and make a profit. Despite these challenges, some farmers in Bangladesh have increased their production of maize, wheat and mung bean during the dry season. You may wonder how they have managed to grow more while water availability is declining and labour costs are rising. Surprisingly, they are growing more by saving labour, time, water and money. Key to their success has been the conservation of soil moisture and the use of machinery that sows crops earlier without fully tilling the land. And because every field and farm is different, testing and deciding which practices work best has been just as crucial for success. Before we learn how some farmers in Bangladesh are saving labour, time and money, let's take a closer look at what affects soil moisture. The type of soil and the way you manage it influences how much water enters the soil after you irrigate or rain has fallen. After the rainy season, the sun causes the soil to dry. By leaving straw on the field, water enters into the soil more easily and the soil remains moist longer. The reason for leaving straw is that the soil stays soft, because the soil will stay cool. This is why it is good to keep the straw. If it wasn't there, the soil wouldn't stay cool. The sun would harden the soil. Yet most farmers fully plough their fields 3, 4 or even 5 times before sowing, leaving no straw at all and causing the soil to dry quickly. Farmers use draft animals that are slow to plough the land and that require a lot of feed and labour to maintain. Or they use power tillers that are faster but that consume costly fuel. And because there are so many farmers who need their land prepared, service providers find it hard to service them all on time. But is it actually necessary to fully plough your land? Let's see how farmers in 2 different environments in Bangladesh improve their profits by tilling less and making better use of soil moisture. In coastal areas, where soils become saline towards the end of the dry season, farmers can often only grow just 1 rain-fed rice crop per year. Yet a group of women in Shobna village in Khulna succeeded in growing a dry season crop, even with hardly any irrigation. Let's find out how. With the help of a facilitator, they drew a calendar showing rainfall and crops. As the sun dries up the soil, salt gathers at the surface. To illustrate this, the women drew white lines. The length of each line shows the amount of salt in the soil in a particular month. As salt levels rise towards the end of the dry season, it damages crops that are sown late. So, they quickly realized that if they wanted to grow a dry season crop, they had to find ways to harvest their rice earlier. If the rice crop is harvested earlier, there is still water in the soil. Wheat and maize will benefit from this. Salt will come up less when there is moisture, and our crops will grow well. That is, if the rice can be harvested earlier. By growing a shorter duration rice variety, Deepali and her fellow farmers now harvest a month earlier. They also save an extra week by planting their maize and wheat without fully ploughing their land. By using a two-wheel tractor with a specially designed attachment box, the seed and fertilizer are placed in the soil at the same time as tilling. While fertilizer goes through one tube, seeds are dropped one by one through another tube as the machine moves forward. If you remove some of the blades and till only a few narrow strips of land, the stubble is left on the field. This is called strip tillage. The number and position of blades and tubes are adjusted depending on the crop. Wheat is sown at 20 centimeters, mung bean at 30 centimeters, and maize at 60 centimeters distance between rows. Holes in the seed and fertilizer boxes can be blocked so that only the necessary holes remain open for each row sown. By comparing maize planted under strip tillage with maize planted the local way, the women from Shobna village found out what works best for them. In the plot where maize was planted the traditional way, the soil is bare, the plants are short, and their leaves show signs of salt damage. In the plot planted under strip tillage, the soil is covered by rice straw. The maize plants grow well and have a healthy green color. When the soil is tilled with a plough, everything is completely turned over. The soil dries out at the top and the salt comes out more. Even if we put water, there will be more salt and crops won't grow. But if the rice straw is kept, there is moisture inside and the soil stays wet. And when the machine is used to till the soil is less disturbed and retains the moisture. The crop will grow well. Further inland, in Rajshahi, the country's driest and hottest region, the situation is quite different. With access to irrigation water and no salinity problems, farmers usually plant rice or maize in rows, or they broadcast wheat, mung bean or other pulses during the dry season. But with fuel and labor becoming more expensive and water becoming scarcer, they too saw the need to try out new methods such as strip tillage. Now, what makes farmers in different conditions appreciate the same practice? Because you do not fully plough the land, strip tillage helps to reduce the time between rice harvesting and planting your next crop. Early wheat sowing right after rice harvest is particularly important because wheat yields decrease for every day that sowing is delayed. Wheat yields increase by 15% just by seeding in lines, reducing tillage and conserving soil moisture as compared to traditional methods. Let's hear what farmers from Alipur village like about strip tillage. With strip tillage, our expenses are low. Where we are tilling is where the seed and the fertilizer are placed. The rest of the soil stays firm. The roots of the plants are in firm soil. The maize plants don't lean and there is no risk of them falling over. The plants are short and their cobs are big. When the soil is moved, then its strength is reduced, and when the soil is unmoved, the field stays strong. The crop is getting the best environment. Because the whole field is not tilled and the soil stays firm, the crop gets strong. Strip tillage does best when you keep sufficient straw stubble. But do you need to keep all straw on your field? No, you don't. In fact, keeping about 30 centimeters is usually sufficient to keep the soil from drying too fast. If straw is kept this high, it will be good. But if it is higher, people may take it all down to the roots to use as fuel. That is why it is good to keep it a bit shorter. By ensuring your rice tills well, you'll have more straw and it will be easier to find a balance between its different uses. Another new method by which farmers save water, labor and money is bed planting. With bed planting, rapidly rotating blades first till the soil. The soil is then reshaped into long beds that alternate with furrows. When driving the bed planter, the plates in the seed box rotate as the machine moves forward. Each hole in the plate carries one seed that is dropped through a tube into a slit made in the bed. As with strip tillage, fertilizer can be applied at the same time by the machine. You can imagine how this further reduces labor and increases the effectiveness of fertilizer. Even more important is that bed planting reduces the amount of water and labor needed to irrigate your crop. With normal ploughing, there are higher parts and lower parts in the field, so in some areas the wheat gets ruined after watering. The extra water needs to be moved out with pots and bowls. But with bed planting, you see, when you water, it spreads evenly, so it is easy to irrigate. Irrigation can be completed in a short time. For me, bed planting is the most advantageous in every way. Irrigation, water retention, one planting and lower labor costs. Where I would need to spend 1,500 taka with labor, I now only need to spend 500 taka. So, I can plant 3 times as much land with the same money. Labor costs are lower, my yields are higher, and my profits are higher. As you irrigate in furrows, bed planting can save up to 40% water compared to flood irrigation on flat fields. Once beds are built, you can also strip till on top of them to keep straw and conserve soil moisture. Not surprisingly, bed planting is becoming popular across Bangladesh's driest regions, where irrigation is scarce and expensive. Another benefit is that bed planting helps to control the farmer's enemy number 1, rats. When wheat is planted on beds, there is this empty space in the middle, which is why rats don't really go inside. The irrigation water makes the soil firmer in the furrows, so rats burrow there less. Because of the space, there is also more light, which rats don't like. Mr. Ashraf, the local service provider, has for many years tilled farmers' fields with his power tiller. But when he learned he could easily replace his power tiller with a bed planter, his business flourished even more. Bed planting helped him save fuel costs and serve more clients. The bed planter has many advantages, as we can do all in one turn. While previously the farmer spent 1,000 taka, we can now do it for 400 taka. So here he has a 600 taka saving. For this reason, I have been able to inspire farmers to have it done this way. You know, the farmers benefited and I have benefited too. In my business, both parties have benefited. As we have seen, different attachments exist for two-wheel tractors, all of which can sow many different crops with minimum tillage. Some seed boxes have rotating plates, either in aluminium or in plastic. Different plates exist to sow seeds of different sizes. Other seed boxes have a rolling cylinder with chambers that carry and drop the seed down a tube into the soil. By turning a knob, you can plant small or big seeds depending on the size of the holes. As each crop is different, small adjustments are needed to get the right rates of seed and fertilizer. Trained service providers know how to expertly adjust seeding and fertilization for different crops. So what have we learnt? Costs for labour and fuel are on the rise, while less water is available for irrigation. This calls for new practices that reduce costs and conserve soil moisture. Growing a shorter duration rice variety allows you to harvest earlier. This leaves more moisture in the soil to grow a dry season crop such as wheat, maize, mung bean and other pulses. Keep some crop residues on your field to keep your soil from drying out or becoming too salty. Use machinery for reduced tillage that sows and fertilizes crops at the same time. Tillage service providers and farmers both benefit by saving fuel and preparing more fields on time. Growing more is possible by saving labour, time, water and money.